can see this?
Yeah, can see them.
Fab. Okay, so hi, I'm Becky. I'm one of the clinical research fellows, and we're going to talk to you about setting up a Pan-London regional research network. So this is how it kind of fits into the afternoon. So we'll talk about shown to be effective clinically. Our practice should be consistent. I'm sure, I mean, I've had experience of moving between different hospitals. It can be a bit frustrating when the clinical practice in one hospital is quite different from another hospital. And collaborative research, so research across different hospitals. You collect more data and it's better data, so it's higher powered, and it's really good for rare events or rare conditions. It's an essential part of our training. You know, we need to be have an awareness about research processes and gain research skills throughout our training. And it's really important that research answers meaningful and relevant questions. So informed by our patients, as in Emma's talk from the RCPCHNS, it's really important that children and young people are involved at all stages, and also by frontline staff, and that includes us as trainees. Might be something that's frustrating or something that you've noticed that's different between the units that you want to look into. And the aim of our network will be for trainees to come up with the clinical questions that they want to find an answer for. So this slide was prepared by Polly, who's on our academic committee, but unfortunately can't make it today. And it's just highlighting really how little of paediatric practice is actually evidence-based. And she made this diagram from a couple of sources at the bottom. So approximately half of paediatric conditions have guidelines, and only a third of these are evidence-based. And of the evidence base, only 14% comes from clinical trials. And actually of the overall funding for research, only 5% is allocated to paediatric research. So the idea of, I think, a Pan-London Research Network has been around for a while, but why are we setting this up now? So I'm a member of the RCPCH Trainee Research Network Finish and Task Group, which was an initiative set up last year. And on it are members from research networks, or basically representatives from all the deaneries across the country. And one of the main aims is to increase the visibility of the existing research networks, such as PRAM in the West Midlands, and assist the development of new regional research networks, like in London, where they don't exist already for paediatrics. And actually, it's been really helpful because the chairs of the existing research networks have been able to, and we've had meetings, and they've been able to share their experiences with us and the challenges that they had when they set their networks up. They've all been going for about 4 or 5 years, and how they overcame them, and give some really useful tips and advice for everyone who is trying to set up a new network where they work. And the other aims are to increase opportunities for trainees to undertake research and support trainees to develop important research skills. And then, you know, kind of address local clinical questions, which are important, and also participate in large-scale NIHR portfolio studies down the line, and also facilitate the conception and running of pan-UK projects, which would be really exciting. So this is our mission statement. So the Pan-London trainee-led network will support the conception and coordination of multi-centre research, audit and service evaluation projects to answer relevant clinical paediatric questions, as decided by trainees and children and young people. And it's important that the emphasis is really on trainee-led. So the trainees are coming up with as trainees, we're coming up with the clinical questions, and also we are kind of coordinating the project. It aims to engage all paediatric trainees, so not just grid trainees, but everybody, general paediatric trainees, it's really important for as well, and offer opportunities for trainees to develop leadership, teamwork and research skills. So we want you to come and join us in setting up the network. So you might ask kind of, why should I get involved? So we're setting up a network infrastructure, and I think the pilot project will likely be on from talking to other networks, kind of a smaller scale while we kind of demonstrate its capability. and then hopefully many more hospitals across London will get involved. It's trainee led, so as I said before, and research skills are important for all trainees. So to develop an awareness of project protocols, be involved with data collection locally in the local hospitals, and also learn about kind of data analysis and writing up data. There's different levels of leadership, so either on the central committee, who will help the project lead coordinate the project, and also locally in each of the hospitals. And Eva will talk about that in a bit more detail later. And with the multi-centre data, it's much, you really have increased power, and it can show the picture across London. And hospitals will be able to kind of benchmark against the regional data. And it's also evidence for the curriculum core competencies, and with the shape of training that's coming in, which Eva will talk about a bit later as well. So where are the existing established research networks? So REN is in Wales, PRAM in West Midlands, as I mentioned, and Pentrain in Peninsula. Manchester are in the process of setting up their network. It's called PRIME. And actually Neotrips, which you may have already heard of, is a pan-London neonatal network. So they do just projects for neonates. And then the Paediatric Oncology Trainees Group, Audit Collaborative, who run national audits, which I'll talk about in a bit. So we've spoken to the chairs or people who are involved with these networks to kind of see what they learned when they set up the network and kind of learn from their experience, which has been really useful. So Neotrips, which stands for Neonatal Trainee-Led Research and Improvement Projects. And essentially every 12 months they ask an important clinical question, and the central team generates and creates a really detailed study protocol, which is then sent out to all the satellite hospitals. Each local team then collects standardized data and sends it back in an anonymized format to the central team. And then the data is analyzed and presented and written up for publication. So just their projects so far. So in 2019, their project was on management of early onset sepsis in neonates on the postnatal ward. And then an ongoing project from last year is a pan-London early onset sepsis observational study. And it's essentially evaluating the number of missed cases of neonatal early onset sepsis when following the NICE guidelines versus the Kaiser Permanente sepsis risk calculator. And that's currently being carried out in 26 London neonatal units, which I think is really impressive. And this is the Welsh network. So this is their mission statement, just as an example. So I'll just let you read it. The other regional research networks tend to also have a kind of an element of teaching research skills to trainees in the region. We won't have that as part of the remit of this research network because it's already covered by the academic committee, which is a subgroup of the trainees committee. And similarly, this is PRAM, which is the Midlands Paediatric Research Network. This is their mission statement. So kind of the overall aims of the existing research networks are to coordinate and support trainee-led regional projects which address relevant clinical questions. And that's very much our aim as well. So here's an example of previous projects, and this was the three main networks, so Wales, Peninsula and West Midlands, actually published an article in Archives talking about how they set their networks up and how they run, and then they also published their projects. So you can see there's been a number of neonatal and acute paediatric projects which the different regions have done, and there's been a few community paediatric projects as well. And then the PRAM network actually published a letter in Archives about childhood obesity crisis and acute paediatrics. And this is just an example of an abstract that was accepted for the RCPCH conference and then published from the REN group about using chest radiographs appropriately. So the Paediatric Oncology Trainees Group, or POTG, Audit Collaborative was set up, and they've done a multi-site national prospective audit of renal tumour biopsies following guidance change. And they've presented this data nationally at the Children's Cancer and Leukemia Group meeting, and they've also submitted it for an international conference. And they're currently undertaking an audit on the use of a drug for treating osteosarcoma. So just going back to the benefits to trainees, the three Welsh, Midlands and Peninsular networks did an online survey of their trainees, and they published the results in their archives article. It was completed by 35 trainees who'd been involved with projects in those regions. And you can see that 74% of the respondents, the trainees who replied, said that the involvement network could increase their confidence moderately or significantly in conducting a multi-centre prospective study, and also their team working skills. And I think the thing to highlight is you don't have to be the project lead to gain benefit from taking part. Everybody will develop skills, whether they're kind of collecting data at a local level, on the central committee, or kind of the project lead. You don't have to be the person that's writing at the manuscript or doing the statistics. And then when they looked at the free text comments in the survey, trainees said that it improved their awareness of research opportunities. They found there was higher impact with the collaborative projects and a common goal. They developed an enthusiasm for quality improvement, and they liked the camaraderie and the networking opportunities that taking part in these projects kind of led to. So I'll just hand over to Eva here. Eva, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. Thanks, Becky. Becky already mentioned that the curriculum also mandates research. And as I'm sure you're aware, the shape of training is coming in, the change in training structure. And with that, the lovely Progress curriculum is getting a revamp as Progress Plus. And this should come into effect from August 2023, so it's not far away. And Yvonne Savage at the RCPCH, who might or might not be here today, she's on the, I think, education and training group there, has kindly shared with us what the research domain is going to look like then. It's going to be renamed Research and Scholarship, and the learning outcomes themselves are not much changed. It's obviously now will be applicable to a core training and then specialty training with the new shape of training division. But I do want to point out that research is really being emphasized. For example, at core training, it will become a requirement to carry out a systematic literature review. And any research proposal, for example, for our network, should be prefaced by a literature review, tick, there you've got a competency. And everyone has to participate in research-related activities. Again, why not participate in this network? And also, generally an EBM-based, evidence-based medicine approach is absolutely key. We now all have to constructively analyze our patient manage and come up with questions for the literature, questions, for research. Again, that's what we're trying to encourage here. And note that we're all going to have to complete good clinical practice training, which is fantastic, given that consent, for example, seems to be such a pertinent topic, as we heard just from the RCPCH and us talk. And if you show the slide for specialty training, thank you. Certainly, once you're at the specialty level of training, it's becoming even more imperative that you are research active. You can see you have to undertake research. Also, you have to be able to talk about it eloquently, both to participants, to children, young people, and to colleagues. So critical appraisal and consenting is becoming key. And also here, note identifying potentially eligible patients. If a research network project, for example, would be running and you're recruiting, collecting data, there you go, you've achieved that aim. So really, yeah, the curriculum mandates it. So how about in practice? How are we seeing this work? I think we've touched on some of this already before, but the trainee is the initiator. So we're planning to create a pro forma for submission of project ideas, which then the central committee of trainees and consultants hopefully will review and revise. There hopefully is a peer review process if we got a lot of interest as to which projects to take forward, and the PPI process obviously has to happen. And then together, trainee project leads and the committee will come up with a study protocol and a data collection tool, which is then disseminated to the network of established links in each hospital. And then the local leads of the network take the responsibility to register with their local clinical governance departments and or R&D departments, depending on the nature of the research being carried out. And after that is really the core of it all, what it comes down to, that all trainees should participate in data collection. And then data gets anonymized and sent back from each trust to the project leads. And the central committee supports the lead with data analysis and writing up of results. And the idea is that local trainees, the local lead trainee, can present at their local governance meetings and also has the ability to compare the performance of their trust's performance in the particular research question that was being answered pan-regionally, a bit akin to when we participate in national audits, which is, I think, a very useful thing to do, learn from best practice, etc. And then the project leads would be the one who takes more the responsibility of writing up results, publishing it in peer-reviewed journals, etc., and presenting at more regional and national conferences. We gathered much more, lots of practical tips from talking to all these established networks that Becky has mentioned. As to the content of projects, what can be done, what can be answered, clearly from the experience, it's mostly service evaluation work. Of course, service evaluation, QI, and research is a whole spectrum now. So, it depends where things fall, but often being more on the audit side makes it easier in terms of not requiring ethics approval. It's key that relevant clinical questions should always be at the heart, and the advice that we very much want to go forward with is that it should be a simple and achievable project. Project length is recommended to be at the very most 12 months. We would aim for 6, and importantly, have projects ready to coincide with trainee rotation dates. And as to the team, who does what? We've already mentioned quite a few roles. Obviously, engagement can be challenging, particularly in the setup phase. And everyone's told us it's taken 2 or 3 successfully completed projects before the networks really got going. Many people get scared by stats and analysis parts, and other networks have utilized statistician students who would be keen to get involved to do this for free for being in a publication. So all these problems can be solved. And authorship on any ensuing publications obviously is an issue that everybody will be interested in. And we're planning to create an SOP for this. For example, the Pediatric Oncology Trainee Group has a very good SOP that specifies what makes someone a collaborator or contributor. But I think the key theme is always that the network itself is the main author of any publication, but that anyone who contributes gets mentioned in some way, so nobody gets left out. And another top tip, which is we really hope to embed in everything, is this pairing up of juniors with seniors, or more experienced with less experienced trainees, so that there's an element of mentorship as well going on. So yeah, this is a big recruitment call, and we really want people to think about how they can get involved. I'll give you a bit more detail of the different roles and responsibilities. As we said, there's 3 parts really: the central committee, a project lead for each project, and a local team, and they all interact to some extent. The central committee specifically holds overarching roles such as recruiting and communicating with each trust, managing a website, an email newsletter, social media, etc. And then reviewing and supporting suggested projects. And then once a project gets going, they obviously are massively supportive in the design and of the protocol, and the data collection tools will help with dissemination and will support analysis and write-up. So really, we're looking for lots of people to join this central committee, some chairs, secretary, communications team, an IT team, and generally anyone who's keen and flexible and would like to get involved at this level. And again, this of course would be highly attractive, I think, to any senior trainee who's coming up to consultant interview, but equally junior members would be so valuable to have on a central committee for longevity and continuity. And also, we really want some consultants on board at this level in a supportive and mentoring role, really. And then this is the project lead team. This can be someone who dips in and out. You don't have to be involved with the network constantly. You bring the idea to the network and then really lead on your particular project. And this can be one or more trainees who obviously will hold quite a few central roles that are detailed there. But also as a consultant, we see this as a great opportunity. If you have a special interest in an area and team up with a keen trainee, that you could collect regional data using our network. So that's what we need. And locally then, this is the foundation that everything rests on, really, this network in each trust that we're planning to build up. The lead trainee in each trust has quite some roles as well, acting as a contact point with the rest of the network and the central committee, and really taking on local leadership for the project, liaising with departments, leading the data collection, feeding back the data and presenting locally. And again, for continuity, we think it's very important that we do recruit a consultant at each trust as well. And don't underestimate that every single trainee in the LSP hopefully will be involved in this, not only in collecting the data, which is so valuable per se. You get to know about consent, talking about research to patients, data collection tools, but also feeding back on a pilot of the protocol, maybe of the data collection tools, so really being involved. So we need a lot of people to come forward, hopefully, and we'll keep flagging up later how to contact us if you want to be involved. So it is now 5 minutes past where we were meant to be in the agenda. So we haven't done too bad, I hope, and did some catching up. And we want to make this a little bit more concrete and are planning to break up now into rooms. In each room, there should be one of the academic subgroup members to lead a little bit of discussion. And we are wanting you to think about a possible clinical question that could be suitable for a pilot project. Why is it important? What's the hypothesis we're trying to answer? What are the aims? Is it feasible and achievable in a 6-month time frame? A bit about data storage, and most importantly, maybe how will it improve or change practice? And if we have time, there's a few other questions we might consider. But I think that workshop leads have these questions available so they can talk you through it, but please all get involved, and we hope that trainees are very much leading these discussions.